looking back at that mom who was trying to raise my toddler, and we were talking about having another baby, and I just wasn't okay at that point. It's okay to tell people you're not okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to prioritize going and get help, in the same way that when I was diagnosed with cancer, we were like, oh my gosh, this is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Let's handle this now. To have really messed up mental health, to feel like, I mean, especially because it tends to get worse. Cancer does the same. It takes your life from you. And that's why people freak out when you get diagnosed with that. I would love for you to freak out in the positive way and be like, oh yeah, this is real. I'm not failing at life. I didn't do something wrong. I'm really suffering right now. I really need help. Okay, I love when we do an episode that comes from a genuine place.
Mm-hmm.
However,
the rest of them are lies.
Yeah, no, like we'll come with an idea and then we'll be like, well, actually this happened. What if we kind of lean into that more? What we just experienced right now is Layne received a DM from someone, which we'll read to you, that has to do with mental health. Mm-hmm. We were going to record an episode in response to that a little later, but upon talking about it and talking through some hard things we experienced this weekend, we realized that we're actually not our best mental health wise. And so we would love to talk about this because it can come from a genuine place. Funny thing about it though, is we're going to be offering some like encouragement and guidance. And I guess I just want to preface it by saying this is very much friend to friend. This is very much us coming to you as fellow women who experience mental health lows. And then life still expects us to go forward. And how the heck do you do that?
Yeah.
And so we'll share, I mean, we are educated in this, but also this is like our day-to-day challenge of overcoming the lows that feel like they will take you over.
Yeah.
And coming back to a place of like, okay, I can do this and I will do this and it's going to be good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And also to say, we did an episode maybe about almost like a year and a half ago, perhaps. Pretty early. I think it's all the way back in season 2. So if you want to go find it, you'll have to scroll, or I'll link it for you guys. Just about depression generally, in which we really shared like personal histories and thoughts about that more on just like the adult side of just like people who have, and pretty specifically depression. We talked about that a lot more.
Was that like season 1?
I think it was the beginning of season 2 because I feel like it was cold outside.
Oh.
Just having like a
very depressing
that one.
Yeah.
I think we thought about sometimes people get a little depressed around holidays, post-holiday, or like, whatever.
It's all coming back.
It's all coming back. So there's that. That's going to be a little more like what our stories with this journey have been, and a little bit more of a groundwork from there. This, I think we're going to look more directly into like how to be the one who cares for kids while experiencing mental health. That previous episode had not a lot to do with parenting. That was much more of a people
journey.
stuff one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this one, I think we want to focus it a little bit more around like if you all are going through this and our parents and our teachers, like how do we do these interactions with these kids when we have this going on our adult side?
Yes. Great. Well, guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. My name is Jessica Hover.
I'm Layne Sherland, and this is Very Good Enough, a podcast from Very Good Mothers Club.
We're so happy you're here. And we'll just jump into this DM, which she said she's comfortable with us sharing.
Yes. And if you guys are like, wow, really would like you to talk about my story and my question like this, could you please address me so specifically, you're very welcome to send me a DM at EnquiryCo. You're also very, very encouraged to send us emails at verygoodenoughpod@gmail.com. Both of those links are in the show notes. You can click on either of those spaces.
Yeah.
In particular, this season, we're going to be doing bonus episodes really only as a response to listener emails. So if you have thoughts about this and would like a little bit of follow-up, reach out to us, send us your stories, ask your questions, throw up a flag of like, like, hey, I did not enjoy the way that you addressed that in that way. You know, like we want to be having this be more conversational and more clear, especially around one like this that's so tender and so personal. And of course, we're going to read you this very personal story and then speak to you from our very specific experiences. And yours will be so different. So we would love to bring more of that picture, just get a more full picture of a sort of collage of experiences around this. So that we all feel a little less alone.
Totally. And every month we lead a call together in Very Good Mothers Club in our online community. And what we find there is that it becomes a time for us to like speak on past episodes, but also you can really share what you're going through and find a whole group of really supportive, encouraging people who will give you feedback. And you can be somebody who's speaking into their lives too, because you might feel like you don't have anything to offer, but you'll arrive and be like, oh, actually, I do know what it's like to have been pregnant or to wonder what I'm doing next in my life or whatever it is. You're going to have something to give as well. And that provides a really good sense of like dignity and like, oh yeah, I'm somebody in here. So join that too if you want to. We would love to have you. Now for the DM.
Hello, and thank you both for what you do. You're so welcome. I want so badly to be a good mom, but my mental health is in a really hard place. I struggle with PMDD, and I have a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. When I feel really bad, I can still feed them and hug them and keep them safe. But a lot of the time, that's it. It's the bare minimum, or sitting on the kitchen floor just totally without motivation to even really exist. I'm worried that their life isn't fun enough, that when I'm struggling, they miss out on learning new things. And ultimately, I think I'm afraid they'll only remember me as depressed. Do you have any advice or tips and tricks for just keeping on or motivating yourself when everything feels too big? I'm really trying. I want to be happy and have the best life. I know this isn't 100% of the time, but I don't hear other moms talking about it, so I just feel a little bit lost.
That was so beautiful.
I agree.
Really, thank you. Thank you so much for being honest and open, and even the visual of sitting on the kitchen floor and being like, I don't know about this.
So relatable.
And the fear of, is this how I'm going to be remembered? That is, the voices are mean. Like when we're down and we're just having like an off Tuesday or something, right? The voices that come in and go, no, this isn't just an off Tuesday. This is
their childhood.
Their entire childhood. And it's so, we just relate. You don't have children, and I know you relate.
It's don't so have children, relatable. But the absolute height of my desperate unwellness was in a classroom teaching preschool.
Oh, wow.
So I was like going to actually almost the whole time that I was a classroom teacher was like really, really difficult mental health in like just personal anxiety and depression, and then also like that post-traumatic stress from my bad guy encounter, which you can also dig into the archives and find out. Like all of that was during this was the job that I was doing.
Wow.
Like while
and the job that you were feeling so passionate about, and you felt like you found your thing, and at the same time you're like, wow, how do I feel my worst? Which is also a very common motherhood experience. It's like, whoa, I just met the person I love more than I've ever loved another human. And I feel at my absolute worst. How in the world do we do this?
But that picture of sitting on the floor, just like propped up against something while there's just commotion around you, like there's just children everywhere doing that thing, and you're just being like, well, they're alive. Just waiting for something more than like, I kept them alive today. They look okay from here. Like so real, so relatable.
And I wonder, in that scenario, like that voice that tells her they're not having enough fun. I wonder if you would experience that once comparison kicks in. Like once you look at another teacher, because I find that they're not having enough of something, I'm doing like the air quotes, usually is a voice that comes when you've caught a glimpse of someone else doing something else. It's not
just
usually like
through the window, holding up the child in the air.
For real. Or social media where you're like, wait, you guys do all of that? We actually this morning, or was it last night? Last night, Sean was watching an Instagram reel that was like for parents. Usually his entire feed is full of skateboarding stuff. But now because he's like watched some parenting stuff, more comes up.
Yeah.
And he was like, whoa, this is so cool. He's like, this is an activity someone's doing. Oh, this whole account is about screen-free activities for kids. He's like, oh, I love this. I should follow this. And he was like, look at this one. This is a cool activity. And I was like, whoa, this is so crazy. I was like, you taking in this content is so different from me. And he was like, why? Where does your mind go? I was like, oh, my mind goes to, whoa, for almost 9 years of being a mom, I haven't done this even one time. This activity that she's showing you, I didn't even do it once. And he's like, oh, well, you didn't know about it. And I was like, no, I've seen somebody else do it. And he's like, oh yeah, I think we have seen someone else do it. And he's like, oh, that's funny. Well, now we know, we could try it. And I'm like, this is so cute to be you versus me, because I just swim in like the guilt of these kids. Right. They're missing out on so much because I'm the one who birthed them. Right. And Sean's like, oh yeah, of course they're missing out on so much. Like they're also doing so much.
Yeah. Other people look at your content and Sean's content and they'd be like, oh my God, these kids are having adventures all the time. Look at Eloise on her. Oh my God, look how encouraged these children are being to be Brit. Like it's just
I know. You could do it for anyone. That's why I brought up the comparison thing is I think when we're feeling low, the comparison piece becomes like an exclamation point. That's again, like, this isn't just a low Tuesday. Yeah. This is your children never having enough fun.
I also am like, this day represents thousands of dollars that people have paid into the education of their toddlers. And here I am sitting on the floor, like asterisk in the beautiful environment that I created for their children to independently learn, you know, like, but these are the pieces that you're not. I'm not probably thinking, oh, good thing I've already created such an environment that these children are able to learn and I can sit on this floor and they can bring things to me and we're having a rich and lovely experience. I'm just sitting there being like,
I failed.
Yeah,
I'm failing. Which is like for a lot of these women, I hear from you, like, I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, which means my partner is working, which means another layer of guilt when I can barely, and then they list like 50 things. Right. Keep a house clean, keep these kids fed, keep like all these things.
My partner is working so that I can live my dream,
that I can do this.
Of being here for my children.
Having this home I want.
Arranged my life around being here for these children's childhood.
Yes.
And yet this is the version of me that's here.
Yeah. So those voices are so rude. So she said she has PMDD, right? Do you know what PMDD is? I was thinking, what if I read a description of it just so people could know?
Super helpful. Okay. I know what which category that lives in. I don't know what specific.
Let's see
about
how.
That versus.
We're just gonna see how Google what they say about it. It's a severe, sometimes disabling extension of premenstrual syndrome. So it usually resolves with the onset of menstruation. Oh yeah, I have a family member who has this. It causes extreme mood shifts that can disrupt work and damage relationships. The symptoms include extreme sadness, hopelessness, irritability, anger, and then also your common premenstrual syndrome symptoms, which is breast tenderness and bloating. One thing that's good, guys, is a lot of us don't even know that this exists as like a disorder. You just feel like, yeah, every month when my period's approaching, I feel like I will not make it through. Literally, I'll be all done. And it's actually something that you can go and get help for and even get prescribed something for it. It's just good to know that that happens. Also, what a tragedy that every month we're anticipating that. Right. And then the thing that makes you feel a bit better is bleeding for a week.
Yes, but that I would imagine that would like really prime you for this thing that I experienced was like I would start to get anxiety about the depression.
Totally.
And if that was going to happen on such a regular cycle, I just my system would be watching the calendar, waiting for that time when that thing comes, hyping up my anxiety the whole time that it's not there.
Totally.
Waiting for it to come.
Yes. I feel a version of that. I don't even have my period anymore because of my partial hysterectomy, but I still have the emotions of it. And the emotions the week before always suck so bad. Yeah. And that is a real thing. The anxiety leading up is so terrible. And we do this thing, which actually I know you do it too, because I've heard you talk about this before. You know, where like you think your truest self is like your worst self? Yeah. You know, there's sometimes the way I'm thinking of it is how sometimes you'll say like, yeah, and then this goes wrong. And it reminds me that I only ever do it wrong. Like I only ever am that like 19-year-old who forgot to show up for work or something like that. And I think that also can happen to us inside of early parenthood, especially in something like this, where even if you're having a high moment, there's, I don't know if it would be like imposter syndrome or something, but it would be that thing that tells you like, yeah, we're having a high moment, but they have a sad mom or they have a depressed mom. I remember when Eloise, basically the first 2 years of her life, I battled super badly with depression, to the point where it was like, I ended up having like suicidal ideation and ended up needing professional help. But I would feel that in me of like, what is my normal? Like, who am I? And really what I wanted to do was like sleep all the time. And it was not even just that I was tired. It was that I would hope I would wake up and feel better. And then because I wasn't, like, okay, well, I'll try it again. Or like you go and take a shower because you're trying to not get clean, but get like the feelings off you. And like, okay, maybe at the end of the shower, I'll feel better. Okay, I'll go for a run. Maybe at the end of the run, I'll feel better. And the feel better would never come. And then it just starts to
so depressing.
Oh, it's horrible.
The more that you try, the worse that it gets. And then you're resentful of all the trying. Like that feeling of striving is so
absolutely
brutal.
And you start to think like, oh, I guess this is who I am. Like I remember being a happier person. I remember being someone else. And now I'm here. And the longer that this low sticks around, then is that who I am? And then those fears really do come of like, okay, so is that the parent that these kids have? Like my kids have this one. I didn't want that for them, but I don't know how to get out of it. What I can tell you, what I would tell myself if I ever felt this again, or even like when I look back, what I wish I told myself was, you don't have to pretend. You don't have to fake it till you make it and be like, no, this will pass. If it's not passing, you're not crazy. Go tell someone, like go tell professionals and be like, I insist I need some help getting through this. For me, what I needed was actually medication. I'm not medicated now. I was on medication for like a grand total of 7 months, I think. And it helped so much. But what it helped was it basically made it so that everything else I was doing that was very helpful actually could work. Where prior to that, I was just running myself crazy being like, okay, I'm going to check all these boxes, everything you Google for like how to make you feel better when you feel depressed. I was doing all of them. And like you said, it makes you feel worse when none of them work.
It makes you feel like you're the extra broken thing. Like I'm the exception. All the things. I'm special bad.
Right. Exactly.
My badness is the special kind.
Yeah, exactly. And Sean and I actually were just talking about this past week of the process of like, why did it take so long for me to get medication? And I was very afraid of it. I was afraid I would pick the wrong one. I was afraid I would need it forever. In fact, the first big diagnosis I received that ended up being the incorrect diagnosis, but the person gave me medicine based on like a 3-minute conversation and then said, you'll probably need this for the rest of your life and your kids might need this. And that was so terrifying. Now, the medicine itself made me feel way better. So then I was like, well, crap, is this person right? Which, just to tell you how the story went, I then went to Spain on that same medication. So I had this diagnosis. They said, maybe you have bipolar because bipolar is in your family. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. From what I see from bipolar, I don't have the symptoms other than really severe depression. I go to Spain. I meet with a psychiatrist there. The woman interviews me for, it had to be at least an hour. She had a pen and paper and is just asking me questions on questions. Like, okay, describe that. Okay, well, tell me what this makes you feel when this, like the most thorough thing. And then she said, I don't think you have this. And I think this isn't going to be the best medicine for you. And I think you're on too much medicine. And she kind of made a joke like, you Americans, you just throw a bunch of medicine at people and think that this is going to be the way. And the medicine is super expensive. And whereas in Spain, it was like $20 versus here, it was hundreds of dollars. Crazy. Anyway, I got on a different medication. And then this woman, so amazing, was like, hey, we're just going to keep you on this as long as you need it. Which means not forever, unless you need it forever, which I would be very surprised that doesn't usually happen. And so just to like give you that framework, because what I needed, if I was staying in the States, I needed a different doctor. I needed to go to someone else and say, hey, I was just prescribed this based on a 3-minute conversation. I need more time with you. I need to be comforted and assured that the medicine that I'm on is the right one. And what if I don't want to be on it forever? Again, being assertive with the medical world.
But also knowing that like that first incorrect diagnosis with the incorrect medication that was too much helped enough.
Yes.
To get me enough.
Yes.
Enough of like face above the water to get some breaths in.
Totally.
And look for the next thing. And being like, even insufficient assistance.
Yes.
Like even when you go for help and it doesn't go well.
That's right.
We're
moving.
Little step on the path forward, which is hopeful.
Yes. And what actually happened prior to that, so that happened in Michigan. The week before or 2 weeks before, I was here in LA and I was prescribed a different antidepressant by a really nice, sweet doctor who had a family member who had taken her own life. And this doctor was so reluctant to give me medication. And she was like, I want to give you something, but I want to walk with you. It is not correct of me to give you an antidepressant and then not see you again, because antidepressants or certain types of medications can make you feel worse. And that's what happened. And that I look back and go, yep, that was on me, because I should do the safer thing. But again, it's like I got the ball rolling. I did something. Yeah. So I was on a medication for a week that made me feel way worse, to the point where I was like so done. And I had a family member who was in the medical world who noticed how not well I was and drove me and Sean to a place where we could get immediately the care that I needed, which then I was put in that outpatient program for 10 days. Anyway, it was a whole thing. And I'll tell you that part too, because if you go for a medication and it is the wrong one, just change it immediately. Just call your doctor right and say, I am feeling worse, and they will help you immediately and you will get something. Because once I was put on the medicine that worked, it was like life changing. I mean, not like life changing. It literally, I woke up that day and it was like my mind was so used to just going to the low place, but it was as if I got clotheslined, like just stuck, like I was gonna go there, and it was like, nope. And I just couldn't get that low. I finally felt like I wasn't drowning. I didn't have the tools yet for like being okay, but I wasn't going to be gone that day. I was going to be there. And then we got on an even better medication that worked really fast and was really great. And alongside that medication, we got some part-time childcare. We got my social life back to a place where I wasn't alone as much. I could start making friends and getting better rest. We basically realized like the sleep deprivation had gone too far. This wasn't going to work. To have really messed up mental health, to feel like, I mean, especially because it tends to get worse, tends to get to a point where you're like, yeah, I'm going to say it because this is where I got to a point where I really thought my people would be better off without me, including my child, who I loved more than anyone. I really got to a point where I was like, no, I think she would do better without sad mom. Cancer does the same. It takes your life from you. And that's why people freak out when you get diagnosed with that. I would love for you to freak out in the positive way and be like, oh yeah, this is real. I'm not failing at life. I didn't do something wrong. I'm really suffering right now. I really need help.
I need something.
Yes, exactly. And so seeking professional help to say, is there anything that I can receive from you? Even sometimes supplements can be very helpful for our mood. They don't.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Right? They don't always, like for me at that point in my life, I was taking supplements and still suffering. So feel free to try different things, and then feel free to not have them work. If they don't work, go get help. But yeah. And then the other, like a practical thing I'll say is simplify your routines a bit. If you're feeling really, really low, to feel really low and to be spread thin, or to feel like every day you're having to make a bunch of decisions, that can make the low amount of energy that you're working with go away really fast. And so if you can make it like, okay, my meals are going to be super simple. Our daily activities are going to be super simple. My kids are going to have screen time from this point to this point, and I'm going to choose the show. I am not going to feel guilty about the show I picked because I picked it ahead of time based on these values of mine. And that's what we're going to do. And you're just like simplifying everything so that when you do use your precious energy to be the mom and the woman that you want to be, you have the energy there because you're not having to make your decisions and where am I going to go today and what am I going to do today and who am I going to see and how are we going to do this. There's a bit of planning and simplifying. Even if you spend a lot of time in your house like cleaning up messes, maybe we get rid of stuff so that you just have less to manage in this season of your life. Your kids will be fine with it. They're going to be happy. They're just going to be happy to be with you and to do the stuff you guys are doing.
Yeah.
There's also always going to be the same things true about our bodies, just like no matter what stage of life we're in, even when we're empty nesters, even pre having children, which is like just these basic building blocks of like, how much rest are we getting? How much movement is happening in our life? How's our nutrition? Even like, how's our social life? How's our spiritual life? Those just basic things. If we're really neglecting those, we will feel it. And so especially in a stage where we're doing worse than we normally are, and we're being asked to do more than we normally would, because to raise young children is the demands on your body, on your time, on your, even like around the clock. You're up in the night when you wouldn't normally be. You want to then look at those basic building blocks of a human body and what you need to function and see, how can I invest more into that? How can I make sure that just like fundamentally I'm as strong as I can be in a season where I'm still going to feel pretty weak, and that's okay. And I always hate telling you like, get more rest, when I know what it's like to have little ones and they just aren't very cooperative, right? And you're like, but I need rest. But I would say like, let a loved one know, if you're really suffering, then we're going to need some other people to step up and carry some of your load so that you can be okay. And it's okay to tell the people in your life, like, I'm doing this because I want to be able to care for my family in the best way, care for my life in the best way. So could you help me get some extra sleep right now? Or what do we need to do so that I can get a longer chunk of sleep in a week? Even once a week, get like really solid sleep. That could make a big difference in your life if you're spending every night getting up around the clock.
Yeah. Really good. So practical.
Yeah.
I want to move into talking about the effects of this on your child.
Yeah.
But I'd love to start with talking about Eloise, who was the child that you had at this deeply dark time in your life, remains the child that you have currently, is alive, is 9, is someone we can look at, to think about whether
talks about her feelings
or not sad mom ruined Eloise's life.
Yeah, that's so great that you bring that up. Yeah, it's very interesting because something we've talked about before is sometimes your biggest fears, like something will happen and you go, is that it? So like, I'll use an example I've used before. Juliet, my youngest, Jules, she was in the NICU, right, for almost a month. And I wasn't there the whole time. I had Wilson, who was just a year old. And sometimes things will happen. She'll act a certain way. And I'll go, oh, is this because I wasn't with her?
Yeah.
And Sean will be like, you are a little crazy right now, in a loving way.
Love you. Understand why you feel scared about that. Understand that that's a core fear for you. Also, no.
She's fine. She's being 3, right? So I say that because there are some times where Eloise will do certain things and immediately I go, oh, like, is that because I was like this back then?
Yeah.
And then thankfully on those, I actually don't even really need Sean to say it because I'm so used to saying to myself, nope, like, she's doing great. And it's okay for her to have lived through that. It is okay for our children to experience us struggling, suffering, being sad, struggling with low mental health, physical sickness. Like, they not only can handle that, but like, that is what it is to be a human born into a family. It's to experience the very real aspects of our life together. And thankfully, in that season of life, there were other people who could be what Eloise needed when I couldn't be. They could be what I needed when I couldn't be. But yeah, I think the fear there was so loud. Even once I was feeling better, was this fear of like, did I ruin something? And how much do she remember and what she doesn't remember? Like, is that just somehow inside of her now? But what I actually have really seen in her that is pretty precious is that she's quite an emotional child. Like, I think that's just personality wise, some of us are more feely than others, and she's got these feelings. And what I realize is there may be stages of her life where she experiences sadness, lows. Like, I mean, I always pray that she doesn't end up feeling what I felt, But what I do know with confidence is that I am able to help guide her, and we're able to talk about things, even things past that have happened, or we'll like watch old videos and I can explain that I wasn't doing well, and here's what we did, and here's what helped. And even now when other people in our life go through lows, being able to give her the language for like, here's what's happening, here's why I think it might be happening, here's what we're going to try and do about it. And she absolutely knows we love her. We're fun. I think like her, there's so much of her life. She just doesn't even have a clue that I was feeling as low as I was. And rightly so. I would not like her to know that until maybe she's a bit older and it's relevant. But yeah, I know the fear of that. I even have felt it for my other children in times when I feel low. And yet watching her be who she is, I think she's doing just fine. And I don't know, I think it's important for our children not to be so protected specifically from the emotion of sadness or actually there's a really excellent book called How to Be Sad. If you're feeling low, you should read it. It's so encouraging. But even if you're not feeling low, it's just excellent. And it talks about how in some countries, we really don't like that emotion. And so all of our books are like how to be happy. And like our children's books are like how to be happy. And every episode of Peppa Pig ends in laughter. Yeah. And I love that. And it's great. But they were talking about how even in different countries, it's like Russia, for example, they used like children's books talk a lot about the emotion of sadness because it is such a prevalent part of the human experience. And by showing them these emotions early and teaching them what they feel like and what they mean, then when you get sad, you don't feel taken over or ruined or like, oh no, everything's ending. It's just another layer of being human. And you're like, oh yeah, oh you. Oh, I know about you. Yeah. This isn't my favorite way of feeling, but this is a way that I feel sometimes. And it's just part of being alive. And so anyway, I recommend that book. But I think that idea with young children is like, of course, we want them to have a super happy, fun childhood. Absolutely. We all want that. But if they encounter us sad, that's okay. That's pretty great. You're their introduction to that feeling. So yeah, I'm not feeling so good today. Don't worry, baby. It's not your job to make me feel better. Sometimes I just feel bad, but we're still going to have a good day today. What are we going to do? And then you just move through it. I mean, I literally had this happen yesterday. I was in the house. I was crying because our children, I told you, the kids had lice, and it took, Jules has a lot of hair and it was very thick, and I ended up cutting a bunch, which was sad too. But after 3 hours of working on their hair and then realizing the house was a mess, and I had just used my one afternoon off to get rid of lice, and our house was still messy, I burst into tears. And I was like going around the house, kind of not trying to have anyone see me crying, but just like, okay, you got this, Jessica. We'll come back to life. And then my littlest ones came and are like, are you okay? And so, I'm not feeling really okay right now. That was a big afternoon. I wasn't expecting that. And the house feels really messy and it feels hard to clean it up, but I'm going to do it. Thanks for asking. Love you guys. Okay, here we go. And we just move right along versus like, I'm okay. Mommy's fine. Yeah. I don't want to do that. Do what you need to do. No shame. But I feel like it's good to introduce them to those feelings. Yeah. They have them all the time too.
Oh yeah. I'm going to break down the example that you just gave us, because literally no notes.
Perfect. Okay.
So part of the reason that this conversation needs to be existing and is difficult is because we are existing in a tension here where we know that the first 3 years of a person's life absolutely build the foundation for their whole entire neural function. Yeah. Like 100%. It is important and impactful that Eloise went through that. That's part of her life. That's in there. And there's a piece, part of the reason these voices are so loud is because there's a piece that's right. This matters to her. This is a piece of the foundation. It's not going to be there in these other two people's foundation. Like she's having a different experience than some others, right? Like
true.
This is vitally important. And in order to motivate you all to take care of yourselves, we're frequently talking about how maternal mental health is like one of, if not the primary indicators of long-term positive outcomes for children. So we know the weight of it. And that's a big part of why it's so intense and so emotional. And I don't remember if this DM came straight out of a reel that I did about that, but I got at least 2 others that were like, okay, yeah, but I'm really, I'm not well.
Right.
And there's so much guilt around this for me.
Totally.
And being like, yeah, let's like really hold that part as true and know that that's like part of what makes it feel scary.
Yeah.
But also the other thing that we know about children is that there's elasticity in brain development. It's stretchy. It can be pulled really far this direction and then pulled really far in a different direction and come this way as well. And the long-term outcome of a child's life is built on these sort of winding road of their experiences in a long-term direction. So you could be really going in one direction with a child and having them have a very particular kind of experience. Shift that, turn that boat, which is slow to turn, into a different direction. And if this new direction becomes the long-term direction, this is the way their brain is stretchy enough that this new way will be the way.
Yeah.
And so it's deeply, deeply hopeful the way that human brains function. And I do always want to be talking about the impact of these early years. Obviously, they're my personal passion.
Sure.
I really believe in them. And I want us to do so well here. I want us to build so much richness into this. But I also want us to know that it's not over when your kid is 3, right? There's not a door that slams. You are in this for the long haul with these children. And I feel that Eloise is a really strong example of this, of like, wow, there's a lot of challenge here in this beginning space.
That's a good point.
There's a ton of love, which is key. This is something I feel as a person who's like worked through various different kinds of dysfunction in my own family, but then also been like, but why am I generally pretty stable? Like I seem to be able to recover in an okay way. Like there's something about me that's managing some bullshit like pretty neatly. It's been awful in some moments, but I seem to, and just being like, I think they just loved me so much in and amongst some other pieces that were a bummer. There's definitely and inarguably so much love.
Totally.
And I feel like I can see that in your daughter as well, of being like, the thing that really carries you through is like loving gaze.
Absolutely.
Right? So like you take these eyes full of love and you just put them at these children no matter what, which I do think all of you can do at almost all moments, is just put this loving gaze on there. And I'm a believer that like that's gonna carry us, even if we have some stuff to work through later, even if things get gnarly, like that deep, rich love is so potent. It's it's the driving force of the universe.
Yeah.
And a really clear story, good context around what they're going through. So this like long-term direction, this deep, rich love, and what you're describing of being able to piece the story even in the aftermath together well for Eloise, or in these moments of challenge with children, there's a level of honesty that's essential because they 100% feel you. This is good and bad news.
Sure.
Like they 100% feel you, right? They're in there, especially when they're little. So these like, we're talking about an 18-month and a 3-year-old here are still very much in the zone of scanning the adult to find out if things are okay. Like you're just their primary piece of data. And that's just a mechanism for how children do the things. So the truth is that they know when you feel brighter, they know when you feel darker, they know when you're feeling a little shaky. They don't know what it's all like about, you know? They're just feeling these big, almost sort of like tectonic shifts that they feel the change in the weather. And they're going to fill in information in an information gap. So your small child who is desperately egocentric will build a story around themselves based on these changes in the weather, if not given some clear context by this adult who loves them. So for me, in these times of deep unwellness, going into this classroom, knowing like I'm a secondary caregiver, these people aren't building their life off of me, but we're here every day and they're certainly building their feeling and understanding of this classroom where we are. I'm the only indicator of whether things are okay in here, how it's going to go, whether we all feel safe and open, or whether we need to take care of ourselves and watch out, you know? So I will always, on a day when I'm feeling dark enough that I am not going to be faking it with them. You know, like there's a level of like, I'm not feeling great. I think this is a low enough frequency that nobody's going to be super worried about this. But like knowing this is a day when I may be spontaneously crying today. And even if I don't, like the rumblings on my insides are so serious that I just need to tell them something that's true and developmentally reasonable. Because there's also a far end of this. So like we're keeping an eye on this also. And it's a lot, guys. But telling them truly out loud, no, you guys, I just need to let you know, I'm having a really weird day. It feels really challenging on my insides today. Everything's fine in our class. Everything's okay in our house. Like I've checked, everybody's safe. We're all good. I just want to let you guys know that if things feel a little funky for me, it's not about you. There's just a thing happened, or I woke up feeling just like not great.
Yeah.
And I'm in a time in my life when I'm learning how to manage some things that feel not great inside. And they will ask you why. And you will tell them, this is how my brain works.
Yeah.
My brain needs some stuff that it's not getting right now.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my best to get what it needs. Very vague, very true, very direct, very vague. Because then the far side is, your mom is so sad in life. Mama needs so much help from you because she's so sad.
Sure.
Or even divulging,
your
dad said this thing to me this morning and it hurt my feelings. So
there
is a way that super small children become a counselor for you that is very dangerous. And I would like to offer a stern warning to you about that.
Sure.
Please do keep your details, your adult details into your adult space.
Yeah.
But please do let your children have some context around, I'm doing my best today. And guys, my best is not feeling great.
Yeah, that's right.
I wonder what I can do for myself.
Sure.
Maybe I should get a snack. Mama's going to just be on the floor today because my body feels heavy.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. It feels hard to lift up my arms today. They're here. Can you guys see my arms? I can see them too. They just feel kind of hard for me to lift. So I laid these things out for you and I'm just going to be sitting here leaning. Love you. I love you so much.
Good.
Can't wait to watch you play. Right. There's some clarity and some context to that. I really thought I was going to get some rest this afternoon. Instead, we had to deal with lice and I feel a little overwhelmed. And this is just the overwhelm coming out. These tears, this is just my feeling of overwhelm. Isn't it nice that there's a way to get my overwhelmed feelings out? I'm going to do my best. Thanks for asking. Off you go back into your child life. Like,
yeah.
Absolute truth about what's happening here. This is why.
So
totally
good.
Acknowledge that you feel the things. You guys stay in child space. I'll stay over here in adult space.
That's great.
But being able to tell the truth, even in these vague
simple
terms.
Yeah, that's great.
Super powerful for them. Super powerful for you. It's so crazy to have to fake something like that when you're not well.
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
Sure. Well, and I'm thinking as you were talking, I'm realizing like this woman who wrote us, what she's experiencing is going to be worse for 1 week every month, roughly.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could also treat it like a sickness or something. Like, if you knew for 1 week of every month you would not be feeling well.
Or even that it's just going to be that much worse.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Then perhaps you could just sort of plan for that. Like, okay, so this week is going to be a lot more cozy, a lot more at home. Like, hey guys, my body's not feeling so good this week. That happens. Remember, mama told you that happens like once a month. My body doesn't feel so good. I don't know why, because kids understand their bodies don't feel good sometimes. And then you, mom, probably have some weeks where you feel a bit better. Not saying you feel great, but you feel a bit better. Maybe what you could do for yourself is identify what are some of your goals for your family in this season. Like if you've got this vague pressure to be fun mom, what if we took away the ambiguity and was like, well, what would be one fun thing you would love to do with your children this summer?
Yeah.
Okay. There are going to be some weeks of the month that you are not going to pull that off. Don't put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
But there's probably going to be a week where it's going to be a bit easier. You could either just say like sometime this week I'm going to do it, or just plan for the day and think like, who do I need to help me with that? Do I need a friend to come over? Plan the one thing. I talk about this, so you might have already heard it, but I find that if the voices in your head are really vague and hopeless, they're not to be listened to.
Right.
So that voice that's like, you're not a good mom. You're making a sad childhood for your kids.
Right.
Well, what do you mean sad? I don't really know. Just like overall really sad. Well, why? They're laughing.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it is specific and hopeful, let's trust it. So an example would be when I was at my worst, I would sometimes yell at Eloise in a way that I hated. Like it was like rage came off me and I hated it.
Yeah.
The vague voice would be like, you are an evil mom.
Yes.
You're a bad mom. Okay. The specific voice would go, hey, the way that you yelled at Eloise in that moment wasn't appropriate. It wasn't the appropriate response for what happened. Okay. That's specific. how could that be hopeful? Well, the hopeful piece of that is now that I know, I can look for that next time. So when I start to feel really like insane, like my body's just going to respond in rage, I can tap Sean in. I can go, oh, mommy's not feeling good in this moment, honey. I'm just going to step out on the porch. We had a porch where we lived. I'm just going to get some fresh air for a second and I'm going to come back in. And then I'm going to handle this.
Yeah.
It's hopeful because I can actually do something about it. For someone to come to me and tell me you're a bad mom and your kids are living a sad life, what can I even do about that? I don't even know what the problem is to be able to find the solution. If a stranger told me that, I would be like, I'm not going to listen to you. That was so unhelpful. My own brain telling me that is also unhelpful. So if we can look for like specific and hopeful responses, but then knowing, okay, I'm not going to pull off every good idea that Instagram serves me, every meal they think I should make, every awesome way I should respond to everything my kid does. But I could set a few very specific goals that are fun for me, things I remember doing when I was little that I loved and I would love to try with my little one. And I'll pick one per month if I'm feeling at my worst, something. And then momentum might build. You might do it and be like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. And now I know how to do this. So we'll do it again. How fun. But just like scale the goals way back to like 1 or 2 really accomplishable goals. And then do those and don't plan them in the week we feel off. When we feel off. That's okay. And maybe you just go sit outside and get some sunshine, but you're just like sitting and everybody's sort of trapped in like an enclosed area. So you're not having to chase.
Absolutely.
And then make food planning really easy. Everything as easy as possible. And the outcome might still be, I felt really low today and I'm really sorry. And that's the worst. And you will have done a really good job, a successful job at being the person you wanted to be, in spite of these really awful feelings that you're trudging through. And you won't feel this bad forever. That's something I know for sure. We both know that. It's so seasonal, these lows. So you just want to get through them.
Yeah. And if you need some evidence in those moments when you hear that really false voice come up, being like, sad mom equals sad childhood. Take one little second to like look at your children, because I have no memories of being in a classroom desperately depressed where I can see a bunch of desperately depressed little baby faces, right? Like those people were out there every day figuring out their lives, having a great time. And sometimes they needed extra help from an adult who was not me. And yet their little faces, right? You look at them, they're not looking at you like, oh no, this was not the one for us. Pick the wrong mom. They're just not.
That's right. Yeah. And the tenderness that you feel towards your children, this is going to be a time where you're going to need that same sort of tenderness towards yourself. I think one thing that's very hard for us is when we're feeling this way, that's not the kind of teacher I wanted to be. I didn't want to be sad. It's not the kind of mother I wanted to be. I didn't want to feel so low, or I didn't want to feel so angry, or whatever the thing is for you, whatever that voice is. Having some tenderness, like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry it's going this way. That's really hard. You're doing it. Like, look at you doing it. You've done hard things before and now you're doing this new hard thing, and we're going to get through it. And it is okay that it doesn't look the way you thought it was going to look. And like I said, it's temporary. There's so many seasons involved in motherhood. So I love that perspective you brought of like the bigger picture, like long-term trajectory is in the early stage. If you're super exhausted and super depleted, you won't stay that way. So we want to try and nourish you so you can survive this stage. But also there are going to be other ones where you're like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. And what I'll ask is that when you're in that really super fun one, will you turn around and look for the women who felt the way you feel right now? Because you're going to be a very distinguished kind of healer, because you're going to know exactly what those women went through and be able to identify with them and carry them. And it's all going to be for something. So just get through.
So good, Jess. That's so good.
Cool.
So good.
Beautiful. Okay.
Love you so much.
Yeah, we love you. And if there's more you want to say, now you know how to write us or join the conversation. And we believe in you. And you all collectively who feel the way this woman feels, you're why we're here. We want to help carry you in this season when it feels like you're underneath. So, okay. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Very Good Enough is a production of Very Good Mothers Club. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and leave a little comment. And above all, text it to a friend.